Now guys, hello and welcome to this episode of the MicroPilot, where today I'm going to be taking you through my 5 top tips for new student pilots to hopefully help you save that bit of time and money before you start your flying lessons. Now it's worth briefly just mentioning that I'm not a qualified flying instructor, but I've recently just passed my PPL-H, which means I've just gone through that PPL training process, so hopefully I can pass on a few tips and tricks for you to help you before you start your flying lessons. Now clearly, if you're starting this exciting journey of starting your pilot career, you're going to need some flight equipment. Now you can go to poolies.com and use my discount code TheMicroPilot to get 5% off Poolies flight equipment. Now before we waste any more time, we're going to get straight into it, and tip number 1 is to get to know your phonetic alphabet. Now the phonetic alphabet is used on nearly every flight, so whether that's your aircraft registration or saying things like the names of taxiways, it's something you're really going to have to know. So that's things like Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo and onwards, and the rest are shown on here. Now you really need to get to know these because you're going to be using these throughout your whole career as a pilot. Now one of the tips I have for you that I used to do was whenever I was out and about and I'd see a car number plate, I'd try and say that car number plate in the phonetic alphabet. Now bizarrely, using this method in only a space of about a week or so, I picked up the phonetic alphabet really quick. Now if this is something that's quite new to you, it's worth doing this before you even start your first flying lesson, so you're not spending time during your lessons trying to think about this and get it right. Now a tip number 2 sounds very basic, but it's a very crucial skill to have, and you, again, like the phonetic alphabet, you'll be using this on nearly every flight you do, and that's to really get to know your compass. So not only things like north, east, south and west, but also the degrees of the compass. So there's 360 degrees in a circle, and you need to know what angle relates to where on the compass, so whether it's southwest, whether it's east, whether it's north. So when you're reading your map upside down and things like that, you really need to know where you relate and what headings relate to where on the compass. Now things like this can be really crucial when you're doing emergencies practice with things like an engine out, and you know roughly which way the wind's coming from, but you need to be able to look at your compass and turn directly towards the wind. So really getting to know your compass is quite a crucial thing to do. Now tip number 3 is to learn something called the 6-pack. And no, that's not what I wish I had. It's a set of 6 very basic instruments that you're going to be using on nearly every flight. And not only do you need to know what they are, but also how to read them. Now a very standard 6-pack shown below here is something that you'll find on most older aircraft and the majority of training aircraft out there, whether it's helicopters or aeroplanes or microlights and things like that. But some modern aircraft will have something called an EFIS display, which just electronically shows all the same instruments but all on one screen. And getting to know how to read these is quite a fundamental skill. Now if you have a flight simulator, you might already be quite familiar with these instruments. Now a flight simulator would help getting to know things like this, but you really don't need to know one to get to know them. You can watch things like YouTube videos or look at pictures like previously shown just to get to know what they look like and what you're looking for when you're flying the aircraft. Now learning to fly an aircraft is almost like learning to drive a car, in the fact that there's 2 sides to it. There's the practical side, so building up your motor skills and muscle memory in the actual driving or flying of the vehicle itself, but also there's a lot of theory to get to know. And you wouldn't be able to drive on the road without knowing what all the markings and signs mean on and around the road. And it's exactly the same for flying. Now, as you can see behind me, there's a range of colourful books, and they're my PPL books that you use to teach you different types of theory like meteorology, air law and principles of flight that you need to know to pass the exams, or at least to pass the theory exams to get your private pilot's license. Now, something that might be worthy of knowing before you even contact a flying school, that you can just go and buy these off a website like Pooley's anyway and start to read them. So you can start reading these things through and get to know all of these things, so you already know quite a bit of stuff when you set foot on your first flying lesson, and it saves you having to be taught this kind of stuff whilst you're sat there with the engine running, burning your time and money. And finally, moving on to tip number 5, is something that can be quite daunting to even recently qualified PPL holders like myself, and that's the use of the radio. So when you're quite new to the radio and you have to speak to people like air traffic control, it can be quite daunting because everybody wants to sound like that really experienced British Airways captain. But in reality, you're going to make quite a few mistakes, especially whilst you're training. But a good way to get a good head start on knowing how, not only how to use the radio, but also the different terminology and phraseology of saying different things, is a twofold method that I have for you. So the first method I have for you is to buy the PPL book, which is the purple one in the background from Pooley's, and that tells you everything about how to use the radio and the different phrases and ways of saying things, like getting different services from air traffic to how to relay a mayday message in an emergency situation. And the other method is to buy a radio scanner. Now, tuned into the correct frequencies, you can listen to air traffic control in your local area and listen to what pilots and air traffic controllers are saying to each other. Now, one of the things that I used to do is listen to an air traffic control instruction or message and think quite quickly in my head what I would reply as the pilot back to the controller. And then when the pilot replies, you can hear whether you'd be roughly right or wrong. Now, if you don't want to buy a scanner, because sometimes they can be a little bit expensive, is you can go on a YouTube channel exactly like mine here and look at some of my flying videos and listen to some of the messages that I say to air traffic control and they say back to me, and start to get a general idea of the different ways of using the radio. Now, I myself am quite lucky that the language of aviation across the world is English, given my really bad track record of learning languages at school. But radio telephony in itself is almost like another language, and it can be quite daunting at first. So get in the book and listen to real world recordings of air traffic between pilots and air traffic controllers can be quite helpful just for you to get a basic understanding. But nothing beats real world practice when you eventually get into the cockpit and start your flying lessons. Guys, something that's very important to me and the channel is to get involved and get in touch, whether that's in the comments section on Instagram or on Facebook, and let me know not only what you enjoy about my channel, but also what you'd like to see on future episodes, because I only want to make footage and content that you guys want to watch. So get involved, let me know what you want to see, whether that's ground-based knowledge like this video or flying-based videos. Just let me know and I'll try my best to show you those in future episodes. Guys, something that's quite interesting that's coming to the channel sometime soon is me and the YouTuber Ben Atkinson, with his details shown here, are currently in the process of planning a meetup at an airfield somewhere between our two home bases. So that's quite exciting and that's coming sometime soon, so keep an eye out for that. But guys, stay safe and I'll see you in the next episode.